what we know is we had low wages growth when we had high immigration, and we've still got low wages growth now that we've got low immigration. So immigration can't be the main variable that's determining wage growth in Australia.
All right, the question we have today is, what impact does immigration have on wages?
Well, what a good question. So, big picture, wages growth in Australia is at record lows. It was at record lows before COVID hit, and it's at record lows now. And we need to understand the big picture of what's been going on. For 30 years, governments and industry have worked hard to push wages down. For 30 years, we've been told that high wages make us uncompetitive and high wages cause inflation and high wages bad, low wages good. Well, guess what? We succeeded. We broke the back of wage growth in Australia. We've now got the lowest wage growth in history. And we've got, people as radical as the Reserve Bank saying low wage growth is now a problem for the economy. So step one, in looking at current levels of low wage growth, we have to look at it over a long period of time. We've got really low wage growth now because powerful people have spent decades trying to achieve that. And sort of like the dog that finally caught the car it was chasing, having achieved the goal of low wage growth, turns out that the muffler doesn't taste very nice. The second point is that we're in the middle of a bit of a natural experiment, because some people often think that low wages were caused by immigration, for example. But here we are with very low levels of immigration thanks to COVID. But guess what? Still got very low wages growth. So what we know is we had low wages growth when we had high immigration, and we've still got low wages growth now that we've got low immigration. So immigration can't be the main variable that's determining wage growth in Australia.
All right, so firstly, let's have a quick look at wage growth data. Our first graph here, I've basically got the increase in wages since 2000. So there's about 21 years of data here. And I have these two black lines, and the black line from 2000 to about 2014 is the average over that period. And we can see that per quarter, it's about 0.7%, or just over, actually, it's almost 0.8%. So that's just over 3.5%. It's about 3.6% per annum, okay, which has been the average for most of the time up until recently. But then if we look from about 2014 onwards, we can see that the black line drops dramatically. And the average since 2014 has only been about 0.5 or 0.6 per quarter.
Did anything happen around 2014, Matt?
Yeah, there was an election in 2013, I seem to remember, and the coalition came to power at that particular point, and basically wages have collapsed. And if we're talking about 0.5, 0.6 per quarter, then we're talking about just over 2% annual. And so what we can see from the data is that average wages have come down quite dramatically and has stayed down over the last kind of 8 years of the current government. And we can see right at the end there's some particularly low quarters, which was the beginning of the pandemic in the beginning of 2020. There's a couple of quarters that are still pretty low, and then the most recent quarter has dropped back down again. So during the time when we've had quite low immigration, we haven't seen wages massively increase. Quite the opposite. They've actually come down even more. And so it's clear that immigration isn't one of the major factors driving wages growth.
Yeah. So, and to be clear, that what we're seeing here at the moment is wage growth that's way below what the Reserve Bank wants it to be. The low wage growth is actually a problem for the economy, and economists have always and probably will always argue about what does and doesn't cause wage growth. But immigration plays a really important and interesting and complicated role, because on the one hand, everyone who shows up is a new form of supply to the labour market. And when we increase the supply of something, then we often expect to see prices or wages fall. But of course, everyone that shows up is also a new customer who buys stuff. So they're creating demand in the economy. And when demand increases, then that drags prices up. So those two effects are both real. But what we can see from this natural experiment is at the macroeconomic level, low immigration hasn't triggered some explosion in wages. That said,
so what do you think are the major impacts then? What are the things that are driving wages so low at the moment?
There's no doubt that the main thing is these structural forces. We've changed industrial relations laws. We've effectively criminalised strikes in Australia. We've made it very hard for unions to organise. So kind of all the rules have been sort of changed in a way that make it very hard for workers to demand and get higher wages. And of course, in the public sector, which employs 20 up to 30% of the population in some states, the public sector, governments have been keeping public sector wage growth low. So you got
Wait a minute, Richard. I hear that the Treasurer regularly says that, he wants to see wages increase. Are you saying he has the power to increase wages?
Yeah, just like every small business wishes their customers had more cash but doesn't want to pay their workers more money, Josh Frydenberg wishes other employers would lift wages for their workers and he doesn't want to lift it for his.
Despite being the biggest employer in the country.
Exactly. So the public sector are very big employers, and once upon a time, public sector wage growth helped make it easier to get wages up in other sectors because the private sector didn't want to see their best staff getting poached by the public sector. But not even just wages, like in terms of conditions like holidays and sick pay, and particularly things like maternity leave in Australia, the public sector often introduced them first, and then the private sector kind of had to catch up. So there's lots of things that are keeping wage growth down, including explicit state government and federal government policies to suppress wages. But back to the immigration part, it is possible. We shouldn't ignore the fact that because Australia has a very targeted immigration program, we often bring people in specifically because they have specific skills. And if you flood a lot of people with particular skills and in a particular occupation, you may well be able to use a small number of new migrant workers to push down the wages in a particular industry or in a particular occupation. So at the microeconomic level, it's possible that getting a lot of workers to come in with particular skills bids down the wages. But at a macroeconomic level, we can see we've got low immigration at the moment and low wages growth. So, we can't ignore that fact.
If you want to ask us a question, leave it in the comments below, or you can send us an email at mail@australiainstitute.org.au with Ask an Economist as the subject line.
If you'd like to help spread the truth, share this video to a friend or on your social media and help us get the word out. And subscribe to our channel to keep updated with the latest research and analysis.